Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Deep Blue Renegade podcast, episode number 5. And I think the title of this episode is going to end up being huge. But not in terms of length, just in terms of my huge mistake. So I'd like to welcome you, and I'm really glad that you could join me this afternoon. Let's see. I don't think I did introductions. So I'm Molly, also known as the Deep Blue Renegade, and I would like to, I ended up starting a podcast group on Ravelry, so I'm really excited that there are members aside from me. So I'd like to say hello to all my sock knitter peeps. Hey guys! I'm really glad that I could join you and introduce you to the world of podcasting. I'm not the best, but I'm really excited that you could join me. Coffee is very important. I've been watching Round the Twist, and the host, Karen, always have a cup of coffee. I don't tend to drink the flavored coffees, so I just have, this, and it takes me a long time to get through a pound of coffee. So I've been drinking Pete's and the Major Dickinson's blend or something like that, and this cup of coffee is weird because I forgot to put in fresh coffee when I ran my Keurig machine. It's still drinkable, and I definitely need the caffeine. I don't know, I have to say I've been really enjoying going through her old episodes. She's been keeping me company while I spun the lace weight yarn on the wheel, when I was finishing the even star while she was finishing the even star. And now, just in terms of times when I don't necessarily want to listen to music, then I can turn on an episode of her, and it's been pretty good. And I had realized after I had finished recording the last episode that I am dreadful at name dropping. So the Even Star and the Alfaba sweater are a part of the Knit Girls Stash Dash, and all of my spinning counts for that. And the Knit Girls is actually the first podcast that I started to watch. So I'd have to say that Leslie and Laura do a great job of figuring out fun things to do and exciting things to do, and I am definitely influenced by them. And it's the case where it's just really neat to watch podcasts of people who are within, 10 years of my age. Because it's interesting being a 20-something knitter, and most of the podcasts I'm watching are actually more like 30-something. But you don't have too many role models. And definitely when I started watching podcasts, I didn't have a very large group of people I knew who knit. And it was only within the past year that I've really met a ton of people. So before that, it was like me and my friend Jen. And now I know several really inspiring people. Or inspiring people that I meet on a regular basis because we're in the same place. So other podcasts that I watch, aside from Round the Twist and the Knit Girls, I watch What Just Watchin'. So Emily is adorable and exciting. I know, she's so enthusiastic. I love it. And I, oh my gosh, I'm totally blanking. So I also watch Mel of Single Handed Knits. And she's so positive, and I'm originally from a beach town, so it's wonderful to once a week or every 2 weeks be able to see the beach again. Of course, my beach was Lake Michigan, not the Pacific Ocean, but um, and I think Mel also falls into the category of inspiring people, even though she's probably the oldest podcaster. She doesn't look old. I would have totally thought that she was in her early 30s. And I also was a part of, or am still part of, awkwardly, whatever, the Joy and Smiles podcast. So that this is a podcast that was started by my friend Joyoti, who I had met last summer. So the episode that we recorded on the 4th of July is going to be a monster. And it covers some of the stuff that I've already talked about, but yeah, such is life, whatever. It's sometimes easier to have a co-host to sort of point you back in the right direction. If you're blanking on things and stuff like that. And yeah, so it's that sort of rounds up the list. And lately it's just been because my husband is 12 or 1,300 miles away. It can get a little lonely. So it's really wonderful to be able to just hear people chatting about knitting, and it makes it less lame. That is the dealio there. So I forgot one. And I recently started to watch the Mustache podcast. And so Stacy and Steph, I adore their faces. I forgot to name drop that I'm on their Tour de Fleece team. I am not nearly chatty enough to win prizes, I'm assuming. But they are funny and hilarious, and they put together a really nice show. So I definitely like the 2-person format of podcasts, so it works out. So let's see, because then I also entered in their sweater cal and stuff like that. So I really enjoy their podcast, and I look forward to it every week. So I suppose to get into the title of the episode, I do have a finished object to show, and perhaps it's also a chance to talk about what to do if things go wrong. So I had been working on Summer Blooms by Susanna I.C. And it was a case where I didn't listen to my knitter senses. So as I was flying back to Indiana, I was working on the shawl, and I was doing the short row section. And I was going back and forth, and it's like I might have even started the short row section while I was sitting, in the airport. And I'm looking at the size of the ball of yarn, and I just keep knitting back and forth. I don't have enough yarn. But it was whatever, keep knitting, because it was really simple sort of thing. So this is Summer Blooms. I made it with alpaca with a twist. The base is called Socrates. I ended up running out while I was talking to this charming man on the plane, and then I'm like, I better hold on to this. So then the next day I had podcasted with Joyoti, and the decision was to incorporate the gray yarn in order to finish the shawl. So the problem is that this shawl has a 7-foot wingspan, and I didn't realize that it was in fact so ginormous. So the pattern called for alpaca lace, and I ended up using fingered weight. So let's see, size 7 needles I cast on with size 11 to make sure to have a nice stretchy edge, and that's pretty typical of Susanna's patterns. But I did 13 repeats, and I guess that the correct course of action in this situation was that I needed to do way less repeats in order to have a shawl that was a shawlette size. Because I'm knitting this for my grandma. So if it was for me, I would have worn a crazy massive, what is it? A crazy massive shawl, and I would have just wrapped it around myself a couple of times and called it good. But my grandma is smaller than me, and she had asked for a shawl just like when I knit my bridesmaids. So it was like crap. And I ended up having to do quite a few things in order to make it work. So if we go in here, I can show you a close-up version. So I ended up having to bind off, and I ended up deciding to change the pattern a little bit and doing a 3-stitch I-cord back. Oops, wrong direction. So I ended up doing a 3-stitch I-cord bind off because you want to have a nice firm bind off with this type of shawl. And so as you can see here, this is the gray yarn, and I incorporated the purple back in before the end of the short row shaping to sort of tie it together, so that the lacy part of the shawl would make sense in the context of the short row section of the shawl. And I also tweaked the last couple of rows a bit so that, because even the little, I think I had 17 grams left after this part, the lacy part, which was no way in hell was I ever going to finish this shawl with only one skein. So it turned out that I had used all 100, or pretty much all 100 grams of the purple, and I used 60 grams of the gray. So, yeah, so I did what I could to make it work, and it probably would have worked if it had been more like a 6-foot wingspan instead of a 5-foot wingspan. So, it would have worked if it was a 5 or 6-foot wingspan, but a 7-foot wingspan was just ginormous. Like, I put it around my neck, and it's like to my knees. So it's just absolutely ridiculous. So I'm planning after this to rope it out, but I wanted to show you guys what I ended up doing. I also ended up blocking it funny. It calls for a different sort of block, but I decided to block it out because I wanted to know how big it was and how much smaller I could make it, and the easiest way to figure that out was to have it pinned out and see how many repeats I could take off. So I cast on for 13 repeats. It looks like 9 is going to be a sizable, excellent shawl. The other thing is that I still have, I still have half a tube of beads left. So I'm thinking I'm going to incorporate more beads in as I'm knitting it. So this would be the case where, so there are beads running in this center section, and I think that I would, what I want to do is add beads every single time I do a center double decrease, just because I think more beads would be pretty and it would add some bling, and that would be nice. Let's see. And I'm assuming that when I make this a great deal smaller, that I will actually have a 100-gram shawlette instead of a 160-gram shawl, because the crescent shape doesn't really work out for this really, really big size. So I think that's all I have. So I really do like the drape of the fabric. I like how everything opened up. I could have blocked this a bit more aggressively, but I was out of blocking. I was out of pads. I sort of wish I had smuggled some back, but I had brought so much stuff back and forth with me to Indiana that I couldn't really justify grabbing a couple more pads and shoving them into my backpack, because I was sort of pushing the limits of, because I had my knitting bag, I had my backpack, and then I have a small bag for my clothes and toiletries and stuff. And I ended up taking back home a notepad, as in like or here, I'll just show you guys. So one of my husband's friends has a small notepad, and wasn't really using this big one. So this is the notepad. It also comes with a keyboard to basically turn it into a netbook. And so my husband's friend was like, yeah, no, borrow it, bring it back sometime, don't keep it forever. He actually has one of the smaller ones, and he uses that all the time, and adores it. I haven't had a chance to break it open and really play with it yet. Back in April, I was having very, very serious, dreadful iPad lust to the point where I had the order form up in my computer all ready to go. So yeah. So this is a chance for me to figure out if this is actually something that I really want. And if I love it, I can probably buy it from my husband's friend. But we shall see. Because I was interested, because I was just thinking about all the ways that knitters use them. Because like at my Friday night knitting group, several of them have iPads or things like it. And my friend Jen has one, and so that's really the source of the iPad envy. But this sort of thing is, well, pretty expensive. So it's probably good to be able to try before I buy. If I buy at all. Who knows? It's perhaps a little bit telling that I haven't broken it out in the entire week that I've had it. But, and I also brought a couple of other things with me as well, but I'll talk about that in the Department of Stashquistions section. So this shawl here, the Summer Blooms, is going to become a work in progress again soon. And I'm a little bit bummed, because I always hate it when you're working on like a cal, for example, like Stash Dash, and then find out that at the very end that you're going to have to start over again, because it's all about the yardage. And so I knit a lot of yardage here, but it's not going to count because it's not quite a finished object. And I really, yeah, I don't know, it drives me nuts. But such is life. Now, the only thing I have on the needles right now is my Sock Knitters Cal Socks. So for the next 2 months, for July and August, we're having a stripy sock cal. And this is the leg of the second sock. I'm getting pretty close to starting the heel flap. So this is size 1 needles. I'm doing this double points. I started the first sock on 2 circs and then discovered, based on how the pattern repeats fell, that 2 circs was obnoxious. So this is 72 stitches, and then each pattern repeats 24. So just in terms of keeping track where you are, it really just makes sense to have it on double points. And I finished the first sock. So this is String Theory Continuum in the Omega Centauri colorway. So we'll put this one down. I hadn't realized this, but this ends up having a pretty interesting construction. So what it has in this in this section right here is a mini Eye of Partridge heel flap, and the Eye of Partridge on the variegated wasn't too distinctive. And then from, let's say, here to here is a traditional short row heel. So what this does for you is, for people who have high insteps like me, it gives you the ability to do a short row heel, and then still have room to have the sock fit right. And just based on how everything fell, it ends up creating this little black heel island in a sea of blue, which I think is neat. So it changed the striping sequence a little bit, but not too much, because with self-striping yarns, it tends to be more attractive to have, or it tends to be more attractive to have like an afterthought heel or a short row heel or something like that. The traditional flap and gusset, because of the discontinuities in it, can sometimes screw up the sequence on stripes. So you can either choose to lose yarn by starting the stripe in the correct sequence, or you can just do a different type of heel. So, and I also in this case decided to make the stripes match. I have a little bit of waist. This is how far, this ball right here is how far I had to go in order to match up the stripe sequence. So I hadn't thought about it, but when I cast on, I was halfway through a blue stripe. So then I ended up just going and doing halfway through a blue stripe, because I was barely around when I cast on. I'm like, there's a difference between, what is it? With self stripe, with these like thick stripe yarns, if you're a little bit off, it just is not matching, as opposed to fraternal, which would be completely different. So in this case, because it's so thick, it just makes it look like you were really lazy. Normally, I don't care if I have fraternal socks, but in this case, it was like, maybe not. So, so I'm saying I'm probably 2/3 done with this, folding them up. It's been a fun pattern to do. So the pattern is Jamaican Me Crazy by Adrian Yu. I believe that's you. Or no, it's Adrian Fung, sorry. And then this probably isn't her most popular pattern. Her most popular pattern is Margarita Bill. But I haven't bought it yet. This is actually my first paid-for sock pattern. Well, I guess I do have 2 sock books, but so it was interesting to see how much more you get as opposed to having like a free pattern. So I would say in this case, it was definitely worth it. I think this goes for $3. I paid $2 for it because I got it when she released it, because she hangs out in one of the groups I hang out in. And let's see, anything else I need to talk about? So I had talked to Caitlin at Knitting Monday, and she had fixed the label problem with the Omega Centauri colorway. So the label had said like 10 rows variegated, 10 rows blue, but it turned out it was 10 rows variegated and 10 rows black. And a lot of people have been lusting up after this pair of socks, because apparently the blue in this is TARDIS blue, and the Whovians of the world get really excited about that. I don't understand Doctor Who. Doctor Who confuses me greatly. I've only watched bits and pieces, and I know enough to, like, I know enough to know that this is a variation of TARDIS blue, and whatever else. So, in terms of finishing this, like, I'm wondering if I'm gonna end up finishing this week. We'll see. It just sort of depends on how much time I have to knit and whether or not I'm going to be spinning a lot. So, to actually talking about spinning, it's probably a good time to segue into it. So I have been working on my gnomespun Shetland top in the Sapphire Surprise colorway. So this is what I have so far of the, let's see. So this is my Ashford spindle, which is the spindle my friend Jen gave me. And I've been spinning this fairly fine. I was, just because it wants to be fine. And what I did differently with the last third was I decided I wanted it to be really different because I really wanted to maximize barber pulling and color meshing and stuff like that. So what I did with, so this is the first 4 ounces, the last third. Oh, it was so confusing. It doesn't look like I'm going to be able to finish all 8 ounces for Tour de Fleece because, as I mentioned earlier, I'm spinning on the Team Mustache. What I ended up doing was I had split the top into quarters, then I had put all, or let's see, I split it into quarters, I had weighed it out, I had divided it into thirds by taking the smallest quarter and splitting it up and then the other 3. And for this last third, I decided I wanted the colors to be really different, so I split it all in half. And then I just sort of fish around in my spinning bag, so this is a knotted bag. And so what I did was I just wound it all. I actually ended up winding this into a ball because I wanted to figure out how much I had left. So the last time I'd weighed it, I had 19 grams of the 34. So, so I guess I'm probably more than halfway now because I ended up spinning at Knitting Friday. And I've actually really liked working with this smaller amount. Like, it's made it a lot easier. It turns out that then my drafting zone can pretty much be the entire width of it as opposed to just a portion of the width of it, which has been lovely and fun. And I still have, I haven't touched my other spindle because I sort of wanted to do the first in, first out sort of thing. So, and while I was back home, I didn't spin at all. Sadness. Like, I don't know, I just didn't feel like spinning while I was there, so I ended up, missing the first 5 days of Tour de Fleece, so that ended up, putting me behind in that regard, but such is life. So probably the game plan was that sometime soon I'm going to finish the last of the first game, and then I'm going to apply them all together. Oh, actually, let me quick grab something. So I did finish the, so this is the first third, this is the second third, and I finished this and then wound it off on my nitty knotty. So what I'm going to do when it comes time to apply is I'll probably wind on my ball winder off right off the spindle, the last third, and then I'm going to wind off of my nitty knotty and make little center pole balls for the first and the second. And then I'll take it from the center and then 3-ply them together. So I'm really hoping for a crazy yarn. While I'm waiting for the last third to rest, I'll probably then start back on the using my other spindle, my pretty spindle, to do the second 4 ounces of this guy. So it's definitely coming together. It's been, I don't know, I won't lie, it's been a long process. So let's see, I bought this fiber in March. It's now, whatever, I believe it's the 13th of July. So, such is life. Because I'm spinning fine, it's taking longer. The lovely thing about spinning, though, so I ended up, what was it? So I forgot my spindle in North Carolina. It drove back to Michigan. My mom sent it to Indiana. I got back to Indiana on whatever, the 3rd of July, and then opened up the box, and I was back to 2 spindles. So, yeah, it is good. So I ended up spinning in the airport. Let's just say I got some pretty crazy looks in DFW. and a couple people, like, if you're knitting in the airport, people don't think too much about it. And there was another woman on my flight who was knitting, because oftentimes, for whatever reason, I don't end up seeing a lot of knitters in the airport. She was working on a baby blanket. And so then I was spinning the airport, and like the woman next to me was just fascinated and was asking questions, and I was trying to answer them in a polite and encouraging way. Like, people just thought it was badass. And it's sort of probably the best way that I can describe spinning is in terms of craft. So not craft in terms of arts and crafts and stuff like that, but craft in terms of when you're talking about craftsmanship and when people think about woodworking and craft beers, and it's about doing it the right way, even if it is the hard way. I think, and it's amazing to be able to say that spinning is probably as old as weaving is, because you have to say that making fabric had to start with some sort of string, and the best way to make string is to spin. And knitting isn't nearly as old as spinning is, because I think knitting came along a lot later, and it was knitting came around a lot later, and so it's just really cool to be able to. My husband and I ended up going to the Indianapolis Museum of Art, and they had this picture of these these ladies from Peru with an alpaca or a llama or something like that, and they were spinning yarn on drop spindles. And so it's just really cool to know that so many cultures have spinning, and it's just really wonderful to be connected to it in that way. So even though it might be more convenient to have machine spun yarn, it's just cool to be connected to that history and to know the craftsmanship of spinning and the craft of spinning is alive and well, even if it's not a really big deal. It's it is something important and worth reaching back and understanding and knowing. Because I don't think anything else that I really do can connect that deeply into the past, and knowing that I'm doing something that people have done countless generations before me. So, spinning is craft. So, I'm now going to, so while I was home, I ended up picking up I ended up picking up 3 things. So there was the gray yarn. So this is my other colorway of Socrates alpaca with a twist, or the alpaca with a twist Socrates. However that ends up working out, which is now in my Albuquerque stash because I brought it with me. I'm probably going to end up rewinding this and putting it back in because I'm pretty sure when I reknit the summer bloom shawl, I'm not going to need it anymore. But it is lovely stuff. It might turn out that I knit a pair of socks out of this. We'll see. Maybe not immediately though. The other thing that I ended up picking up while I was home was I realized my String Theory Colorworks was the only stripy sock yarn I had in my Albuquerque stash. So I decided when I went home to pick up my Vesper. So this is Vesper, and it is her self-striping yarn. The color is the colorway is Sweetwater, and it's 100% merino yarn. So I know it's not gonna last, but my other Vesper socks, which aren't actually self-striping, seem to be holding up decently. I can tell that they're aging faster than my other socks, but such is life. I have so many freaking socks that they're not going to they're gonna last a while just because they don't get often worn. It took me between 6 weeks to 2 months to wear all of my socks and need to wash them. And that was, 5 days a week. So these will last if only because they're one of many. For new sock knitters, I would never recommend doing a merino blend because those first socks are going to get worn a lot. And they really need to be made out of something tough until you have enough time to knit enough socks to replace all of your socks. to get away from the white cotton socks. So these is probably going to be going on my needles soon. As soon as I finish the String Theory Colorworks, I'm going to start socks in Vesper. I'm not sure about the pattern yet. I'll probably figure something out. I guess it'll probably be a tie between vertisanal and maybe some other simple sock pattern. Like I could do socks on a plain. I could do, which is a Laura Linneman pattern. I could do Ashen Windows, which is by my friend Karen, because I believe that that's a pretty simple pattern. Or simple in terms of being able to work with a self-striping yarn, because the main event is the stripes. So I'm excited about starting these. It's so freaking happy. Like I maybe should have saved this for the dead of winter. Like these should have been knit in February or something. But yep, that's that. The other thing that I was sad that wasn't in my stash was that this is my Woolmisa in the Stella Polaris colorway. And I had received this in a swap, but Stella is, by and far my absolute most favorite color of Woolmisa. It is this gorgeous blue with these tonal variations. Let's see if I can show. I don't know if you guys can see how subtle and amazing this color is. And the plan is to knit the shawl Frangipani by Kitman Figueroa. And so it pretty much takes a full skein. And I really want a gorgeous shawl out of this. I've been avoiding making the socks out of the 100%, which I suppose this is also 100% merino wool, but I prefer to have a little bit of nylon in my socks. So I also have this colorway in the 80-20 as well. So I had decided that there was no way that Stella was going to still be in my Indiana stash, that it was moving out with me to Albuquerque. And so the last part, which I've forgotten to talk about this for a couple of weeks now, while I was in North Carolina, we ended up going and walking around downtown Davidson. So they had a farmer's market, and we walked through that. We didn't end up doing too much with the farmer's market because we were traveling, and so there was nowhere to store food. We ended up walking by and finding a yarn shop. So I was with, it was me, two of my aunts, and my mom. And so we ended up walking in, and they were having a class. And because it's North Carolina, they didn't have, there was no bulky wool. There was a lot of the cooler sorts of fibers, so alpaca and flax and alpaca, what am I talking about? So there are a lot of like cotton blends and linen blends and other such things, silk, and a little bit of wool. So they had so much Noro, it was amazing. So I decided to pick up a skein of Noro Silk Garden. And I just really loved this color. So I don't tend to do a lot of greens, but what I really liked about this one is that on the inside you can see the reds and the blues and the greens, and I just really loved the primary colors of this one, so I decided to pick it up. Not like I need more yarn. But, and I might be completely crazy and knit socks out of this. I'm really sort of interested in how it is. And it's, let's see, it's 40% lamb's wool, 25% silk, 25% nylon, and 10% mohair. So it is made out of a lot of tough stuff. So it is 60% tough stuff and 40% wool. So silk, nylon, and mohair are all things that make sock yarn tougher and more resilient. So I'm going to give it a try, making a pair of socks out of this. Nora labels upside down. And I feel silly because it's been, what is it, a month that I've had this and completely forgotten to talk about it. So this is going into the stash box. The stash box is right there. Actually, it fell out of the stash box. The stash box is very full right now. So I think that ends up wrapping up the Department of Stashquistions. I haven't yet. I did make a fiber order. So I'm a part of the Completely Twisted and Arbitrary group, and we are doing a spin along from July to September. And so this quarter, the dyer is Fat Cat Knits, and the theme was rock and roll. So the two things that I ended up picking was there's a Beatles colorway, and then there was a Prince colorway. Now Prince I don't really consider to be rock and roll, but it was lots of pretty colors. So I ended up buying the Prince colorway. So it's purple, orange, and green, and I think it's going to be really pretty. I ended up getting it on the mixed BFL, so it ends up having, the cool thing about mixed BFL is that it's this black and white variegated, so then when you dye on it, then it ends up creating some really pretty tonalness to it. So I'm really excited to get that, and that might be the next thing on the spindles. I'll be sure to show you guys, since it's going to be taking me a little while to get around to it. Now I'm looking on the floor to see if I'm missing anything, and I don't think that I am. So I think that is the show for the week. I guess announcement-wise, I won't be recording next week. My husband is going to be in town visiting, so I'm going to guess that I'm going to be busy doing things with him. We're planning on going to so far, we are planning on climbing at the climbing gym, so I can introduce him to my climbing friends. We are also planning on going to the Santa Fe Opera, so they're having a show next weekend, so we're going to be going and seeing that. based on what the knitters have told me at my Friday night knitting group, what was it? One of them had said that they had been to opera in Paris and Milan, and that the Santa Fe Opera is comparable to those. So, so I'm really excited to have a chance to see something world class here, because my goal is to convince my husband that Albuquerque's awesome, and that it would definitely be worth living here for a while. So part of that is taking him to do fun things outside, and he's not quite as much of a foodie as I am, so taking him to great restaurants won't be as effective. But just showing him that it has like the arts and the culture and the fun stuff to do, sort of thing. We'll see how it goes. But because he's gonna be here, I'm not recording. Sorry, guys. I might record after he leaves. We'll see. So it might turn out that I record Sunday night after I send him to the airport. It'll be a bit darker, but such is life. So I won't be recording as I normally do Saturday afternoons. Let's see, is there any other announcements? So I guess my only other announcement is that I have a group now on Ravelry. It is the Deepbluerenegade podcast. We have a couple members. I started one thread, no one's written in it. I'm going to end up posting a link to this episode, and so hopefully if you end up joining the group, I really hope that you guys end up interacting with each other. Because for whatever reason, I find I've only gotten one comment on a video blog post, so it doesn't seem like the comments are the best place for interaction with people. So I'm hoping that the Ravelry group will be able to do that. So I'd like to thank you for joining me today, and I hope you guys have a lovely week. So take care. Bye-bye.